Wow. Good morning. Happy, healthy New Year to everybody. I need a minute to breathe this all in. It's super special to be invited to be here, and I want to just start with some thank yous. So first of all, thank you, Creative Mornings. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Adam. They held my hand through this process. Thank you to the whole team, Kathleen, and I haven't seen Evan, but Evan kind of gave me a little coaching. There he is. And also the Boca Museum of Art, Irvin Lippman, thank you so much. This is, when I was asked to do this, this is where I wanted to do it, in Boca, at the Boca Museum, one of my all-time favorite places in the city. So as Irvin said, check out the museum, and Smoke and Mirrors is great, but go upstairs and just feel the whole place. And when you feel how much you love it, come back and come back and come back, which I've done for, I don't want to say how many years. I'm going to be giving my age away, I think, as we go on here. Lastly, I would like to thank Amber Tellefson. Amber, where are you? She's back there. This sparkling creative person introduced me to Creative Mornings, and she is my wonderful guiding light through a lot of stuff that I work on and that she helps me with. So thank you so much for introducing me to this. So, as you know, I've got to read notes. I would love to be able to walk around and free flow, but I will not remember what I'm saying if I do that, even though I am sharing my story with you today. So as an elected official for the past 6 years, I have spoken publicly quite often. That's not new to me. But speaking about myself and speaking about my journey is a whole different and quite overwhelming experience, looking out at all of you and realizing that I'm going to be sharing about myself. So bear with me here. Let me just take a minute to breathe it in. Sharon is somewhere. She gave me a little coaching before here to just take it all in and be in the moment. So it's a perfect way to start the new year. When Jenny asked me if I wanted to speak at Creative Mornings, I took the challenge, and she offered me a few different months and a few different topics, but I jumped at the idea of January, and I jumped at the idea of Rise. I love the idea of starting the new year with a challenge, and Rise really spoke to my personal story. So generally, I'm a pretty extrospective. I looked that word up. It is a word. And my work really has me involved with other people all the time, whether I'm engaged with people through my work as a public official, speaking with residents about concerns or my concerns, or pushing initiatives that are important to me, talking about legislative issues, and even in my design business. I'm always working with people. I'm always engaged with people. So preparing for, you know what? I'm not sure I'm going to be able to focus on slides. Yeah. Well, I'm not. I think maybe you're something else, Mia. I think you can sort of go along with So preparing for this exercise today was really a journey in introspection for me. And thinking about Rise in relation to my story took me down a very interesting path in the journey of my life. And what did I do to rise from one thing to another, to rise above circumstances or rise to opportunities, which is really what I'm going to talk about the most. And it actually got me thinking very deeply about a very deep subject, the meaning of life. It really took me far. So I thank you for this exercise, because it really gave me an opportunity to think a lot. But I don't want to get off track. I am going to circle back to that at the very end. If I forget, remind me. So at the beginning of my life, today's a perfect example of Rise, because I grew up in the Boston area, Brookline, Mass. And in school, I was really a social butterfly. I didn't think about my future. I wasn't focused on what I wanted to be, or I didn't have a plan. It wasn't on my radar. Instead, I got married very young, and I had a child very young, and she's also here. She's shy. She's not going to put her hand up. She's all grown up now. And so I got married young. I had a child young, and I was lucky enough to have a family business. And in my family's business, and that's pretty much how I started my adult life. And my parents moved to Florida in the early 70s, so I came along And we were in this family business. In the early days, my dad owned a considerably, you can put a picture of the next picture. So he owned a considerably large chain of retail flooring stores. And that was our business. And he was the guy that said, hey, I'm Dave Levine. Come on down to the store. We're having a big sale today. It might have been Columbus Day. It might have been Valentine's Day. Whatever the gimmick of the month was, that was the big sale. And he did a ton of advertising on TV, on radio, and print ads. Now remember, I'm not a spring chicken here. I'm not one of the youngins. So let me put this in perspective. This was in the early 80s. There were only 3 or 4 TV channels. We had AM, FM radio, and by the way, on TV, you couldn't fast forward through commercials. So AM, FM radio, and we actually read the newspaper. And if there was an ad or something that we liked or a sale, we would clip it out and take it with us to the store. And that's how it was back then. So my dad was a major advertiser. That was really his business model. And he used a big-time ad agency with a big-time budget of high 6 figures, which was a lot. It's a lot now. It was a lot then. And I worked in the office. I did clerical work, whatever needed to be done. But I was always intrigued with the advertising and the creative side of the business. So whenever he met with the ad agency, I would tag along, or I would go into the meeting. I just wanted to be a part of that. So one day we were coming back from one of the meetings with the ad agency, and I'm thinking about it, and I said, hey, Dad, I think I can save the business a lot of money. Let me try to do what they do. I think I can do it. And he said, okay. So keep in mind, I only had 2 years of education under my belt. I had an AA degree and nothing special at the time. I think it was elementary education, which I never followed through with. And I didn't have my fine arts degree. I really didn't have an education or experience. But nonetheless, he gave me a little office, and he gave me a drafting table. And I designed, we can go back one, I designed ads. This is what it looked like at the time. And there was no computer graphics. There was rub-on letters, transfer lines, circles. I would cut paper. Clip art was my best friend. I loved clip art. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore. I wrote copy, and I produced ads for the TV and for the radio, and on my typewriter. And the ads went something like, it's a sale, it's a giant sale going on now at Walrich Carpet and Tile. And actually, I met my husband while I was doing that. We met socially for a moment, and he impressed me with this fantastic voice he had. And I went, hey, I need someone to do voiceovers for me. Would you, I don't have a budget, I don't want to pay him, and, but would you mind coming to the TV station and, running some voiceovers for me? And George, you want to give him a little example?
Here they come. 12 big truckloads are coming in now. Walrich Carpet and Tile.
So that was my early career in graphic design and production and all of that. Now I wish I could say that my dad paid me the 6 figures that I saved him, but I have to say, really, the opportunity, the confidence that he had in me, and the opportunity that he gave me, and the ignorant confidence I had, was worth more than any money I could have been paid. It really opened my world to being a creative. That was the beginning for me. And I have another experience I want to share with you that really has to do with kind of rising to the occasion. So years later, I was volunteering at the Harrod Conservatory in the ballet division. And simply because I just loved being around the arts. I loved being around the dancers and the arts. And I had a friend who was the student services and dormitory manager. And I would work in the office, a couple hours a week and just help her out and a volunteer. And her husband was an IBMer, and IBM was closing in Boca. So they were transferred out of the city. They moved to Austin, and her position became open. So it wasn't a thought in my mind. I was just going in a couple hours volunteering. And the conservatory did a wide search for a trained person in the field that knew how to run dormitory services and manage the students and had some background in dance. And that person was hired, and that person was a disaster. It did not work out. I was still working a day a week on a volunteer basis in the dormitory, and the students, the dancers, asked for me, and the staff asked for me, and ultimately the management offered me the position. So I had no experience, I had no background in this, but as the quote goes, and this I really have to read, I always did something I was a little not quite ready to do. When you push through, you rise above what you think you can do, and that's when great things happen. We'll let Irvin answer the phone. So I added another skill and another dimension to my resume. So skipping forward, because I've been all over the place over the years, as Jenny said, I've been in Boca probably close to 45 years now. So skipping forward and in between whatever I was doing work-wise, I did graphics, I dabbled in interior design, this design was part of my family business as well. I volunteered, I mentored at the Milagro Center, I raised my daughter, and that's when I went back to school. So I went back to school. I went to Florida Atlantic University. Go Owls, if we have any Owls here. And I got my degree. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree specializing in graphic design. So I'm kind of learning how to do it now. Keep in mind, through my education and through all of this time, there still was no computer. There was no computer graphics. There were no cell phones. I think we got an answer machine at home, and that was a big deal. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to have, my phone answer and I'm not there. So we didn't have the technology. So all through school, everything was hand done, hand lettered. It was a little different creatively. Imagine. It's hard to even imagine that now. So I don't know. Oh, so okay, we're getting there. So, but an opportunity rose, and a shift was happening. And my next big venture was my husband and I purchased and opened right here in East Boca, up on Federal Highway, a printing and graphics franchise called Alpha Graphics. Can we go forward? Yeah, that's when I was doing my graph. Oh, go back 1 minute. Just go back 1 sec. So that was the kind of graphic work. That was all cut out from paper. I won a poster contest doing that for Boca Festival days. And it was just either transfer letters or transfer dots. I know you're shaking your head. And I cut out pictures, and that was how I did. I wasn't a great painter, but I could put graphics together that way. So the next big venture happened, and we can move over to Alpha Graphics. And so why Alpha Graphics print shops of the future? Why print shops of the future? Well, it was the first time people started using desktop publishing. I don't even know if we use that term anymore, honestly, but it was a big deal. So I got my first little Macintosh computer, little Macintosh with the little disc that goes in, that had MacDraw, MacPaint, that was MacDraw. Cannot tell you how excited I was about this. MacDraw, MacPaint, and MacWrite. Does anybody here remember that? Oh, okay, all right, I have a few fellow.
We were so good, Clarice. We were so geeky good at that.
Oh my God, it was easy. I mean, it was so easy. So for the first time, people were doing desktop publishing. So I got this little Mac, and I am playing around. All of a sudden, I'm just completely amazed. I can make lines, and I can make circles, and I can make squares, and I can add color, and I could add pattern, and I had fonts. I had like Helvetica and Times Roman, and it was I could change the size of fonts, and I could make columns. I could do a newsletter, and we had dingbats. It was like the original emoji, where you could put little things. So it was all just thrilling. It was, I love seeing. Oh yeah, you could do it with, it was just it was really, I was opened up the real world of design. Really, it opened up the world of graphic design. So in this print shop that we owned, we set up Mac stations, and they were self-serve. We offered self-serve. People could come in, and everyone was really getting into it at the time. Most people didn't have that little Mac at home. So they would come in and use our self-service stations, and they would produce their own resumes, flyers, newsletters, and I just loved it. I just really flourished in this. I was learning and I was teaching people how to do it. But bottom line, it was a print shop, and my husband and I really detested the business of owning a print shop. It was just terrible hours, getting things, printing at midnight, and we just didn't like it. So we sold that business as fast as we could. However, another opportunity rose. With this newly learned skill, the Boca Raton Chamber of Commerce, who happened to be a client of ours, approached me and they asked if I would bring this graphic and design, this new thing, in-house and do their work for them in-house. So this technology was really a game changer for all businesses. Before this happened, we would come up with a concept, we would bring it to the printer, they would typeset it, they would send it back to us, we would make corrections, it would go back to the printer, if it had to be checked again, and maybe go back again. To produce something as simple as a flyer could take weeks. So businesses really started to get into, let's bring this stuff in-house, and certainly simple forms of printing you could do right where you were. So I became the director of communications. We can move forward. I think we're at the chamber. We go forward a little. That was the first newsletter I did on PageMaker, that's been gone for years. And okay, we're not quite there yet. So let's see. So I became the director of communications at the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm going to have to fast forward. Otherwise, I'll have you here. It's been a long life. I've been here a long time. I'll have you here all day. But how the heck did I become an elected official? How did this girl, this lady, serve as a city council member and the deputy mayor of the great city of Boca Raton? So let's go back to chamber days for a minute, which when I was there, it was the late 80s. I don't know if you're born yet, but that's okay. I was introduced to local government in that job, and believe it or not, that was when Meisner Park was just being conceived, voted on, and not even was built in the late 80s, early 90s. So I was very involved in, the chamber was all about commerce, so we were definitely, I called it dialing for dollars. We were calling everyone to vote on Meisner Park, vote on Meisner Park. So that really got me involved in what was going on in the city and the government of the city of Boca Raton. And as the years passed, I became very interested in all things Boca. Particularly downtown Boca, where you can go back to that, where I'm doing the Boca Bop. George and I moved to we lived in Boca for years, but we moved to downtown Boca, and we've lived in downtown Boca for about 25 years now. And so now we're in the 2000s. So now I think everyone's born now. I think we're all here. So we're in the 2000s. I live in downtown Boca, and there's a lot of changes happening. All of a sudden, there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of building. There's a lot of development. Old Boca, which we were all used to, is changing. And I was very interested, and I was very concerned. I really cared about the aesthetic of the new development and what the buildings look like and what they offered to the public. I cared about, I deeply valued our quality of life. And I wanted to talk about how it affected the residents that were here and the people. And I wanted to talk about the cultural aspect of the future of the city. So I rose to the occasion, and I joined city boards, and I joined community committees, and I attended city council meetings, and I stood at the podium like this, and I took my allowable 5 minutes to lobby for what I would like to call, Amber's heard me say this, the human experience. Parks, open space, more beautiful buildings, public art, more culture. I just didn't feel like these things, as we were growing and things were happening and buildings were going up, I didn't feel that these things were being considered. I saw the city progressing and changing, and I just thought that these issues needed to be discussed. So, thank you. So I had opinions, and I was not afraid to share them. And so friends and neighbors started saying, you should run for public office. And I'm like, what? You know, government, being in government was not on my radar, although many things I did weren't. It wasn't part of my vocabulary. It just was nothing I could have imagined or thought of. But I loved my community, and I thought that I could make a difference. So let's be clear, politics is not my thing. Local politics, for those of you that don't know, is nonpartisan. If it was partisan, I probably would not have run. I don't know if I could have gotten into that whole thing, but it was nonpartisan, and I did it, and I rose to the opportunity, and I ran for office. And it was a very spontaneous decision. My husband can attest to that. We were at dinner one night with friends, and they kept saying, you should run, and I went, I'm gonna run. And he was like, we haven't even talked about it. But that was it. I decided I was gonna do it. And we can come back, and that whole story is for another day. So I have to say I was not particularly welcomed by the development community, or what you might call the establishment. They really just didn't know what to make of me. They just didn't get it. I had a tough race. I ran against two opponents who were heavily funded and heavily backed and endorsed, and I was a grassroots candidate, happy to take $5 donations, whatever. I was happy to take anything. And I really was simply the lady that lived on 3rd Street, which is sort of right behind here, with a big mouth, strong opinions, and I felt there was an important point of view that wasn't being represented, or even part of the conversation. So now I was on a mission. I was on a mission, I had a vision, and I had a passion. And I fought for it. And I was elected. You have to get to the next picture. That is the sign of victory right there. That's victory. So we were right at Dubliner, right down the street here, and they were holding me up in a chair. I was very nervous. We were watching the votes come in, and it was scary. And they finally announced that I won, and it was just totally a jubilant feeling. So there I am being sworn in. So I was elected, and I am proud to say I was elected quite handily. I think people were just ready to see someone that they could personally relate to. And I wasn't doing it to go further in politics. I wasn't interested in that. So I was elected in 2017. That happened in 2017. In 2020, I ran for my second term, and I had no opponent, which was very rewarding and was really validation that I was doing good work, and I was now being understood, and I was being valued in the community for my thoughts and my ideas and the things that I was bringing forward. During my second term, the second term when I had no opponent, I was automatically in office, and my colleagues nominated me deputy mayor, which again was another honor and another validation that I was doing good work on city council. And that's how that works. We're all equal on city council, even the mayor, equal voting, but the deputy mayor is nominated by the rest of the colleagues. So I was very proud of the conversations. We can move on a little bit in the slides. That picture there was Boca Magazine did an article and called me a game changer. So that was very exciting. But I was very proud of the conversations that started while I was on city council. After beating the drum every single year when we did the budget, beating the drum to have a Department of Art, public art in Boca Raton. If you Google cities and public art departments, I don't know if you will find one that does not have a public art department. Boca Raton did not. It wasn't, talking about art and culture was not something that was on the radar of this city. We have a wonderful city manager, and for years, and he's done a great job, but he came out of finance. He was not a creative, and there were times when I was in his office just begging for, $50,000, and we're a wealthy city, to put towards art. And I remember throwing a pen across the office once. I was so frustrated because I just couldn't get through to him. But I pounded away for 6 years, and I am proud to say that I have left a legacy, and we now do have a public art department. I think Veronica could not be here today because it's her children's birthday, but we officially have a public art department in the city of Boca, and I'm very proud of that. So also, I advocated for an art and innovation center, which is going to happen right over here across the part of the amphitheater and the green space over there. And Andrea Doyle's here. Andrea Virgin could not be here today, but Andrea Doyle, just show your hand. There she is. This is the visionaries and the future of major art and culture and education and innovation that is going to happen in our city of Boca Raton. So if anyone's interested in the future of that, talk to Andrea Doyle after, because they're raising a lot of money. The city did grant them the land, which we worked very hard for that to happen, and that will be a reality in the future. Hopefully we'll maybe have a shovel in the ground. 2025, that's our 100th anniversary in Boca, so we're hoping for that. And so since I've been on council, I'm really proud to say that I think there's much more attention paid to the aesthetic of what's being built. Mixed use development, more mixed uses of what's being built, and there's more attention to walkability, connectivity, and my favorite word, Amber, you could probably say it, placemaking. You know. So some people say, what's placemaking? Well, it's where do you go to, where do you go? You go to places where you want to remember, where you want to take pictures, where it's meaningful. And so that to me is a very meaningful component in building the city. So the other thing I'm super proud of, which I could not have imagined would have happened, is my very own school, Florida Atlantic University, recently honored me with a humanitarian award. So that was that. That was incredible. So again, I'll just reflect back. I never considered myself a politician. People will say, how do you like politics? And it's like, no, I don't really like politics. I've always described myself as a community servant, and I believe that in my heart of hearts. It was a true honor for me to be elected by the people and get to serve this wonderful city. So this past March, I was termed out after 6 years of service, and now I'm here, retired? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We have ideas. By reflecting on some of these stories, what really became apparent to me, again, in this exercise of thinking about how I rose, what I realized, what I was always willing to do is I always took a leap. I always just was willing to take this leap, whether I knew what I was doing or not. And it allowed me to rise beyond any ideas that I might have had for myself. I simply acted on opportunities that touched me in some way. So winding up, I am kind of getting to the end here. So I've mentored for many years, and I've had the great opportunity to speak to students in schools and scout groups, and one of my favorite things to do is speak to students. And I'm just going to list a couple things or values that I carry that I always say to students when I'm talking to students. One of them is, don't pigeonhole yourself. Clearly, if a creative can end up being an elected official and working in government, anything is possible. So don't pigeonhole yourself. There's all kinds of opportunities out there. I always think it's really important to be curious. I think being curious really leads to learning a lot and being interested and involved in things. Respond to what inspires you. Even if maybe it's not what you thought you might do, if you're feeling something in you, just follow that. And you're never too old or too young. Where'd they go? They're gonna go somewhere. My husband actually asked me if I was going to say this today because it's one of my favorite things. If you're interested, you're interesting. And I love that. And then one of the greatest lessons I learned, and I have some mentors, some people that mentor me here that do this, Neil, Jan, Juan, these great people that give to the community. We rise, we could go back, I had it on a slide. We rise by lifting others. And that has been very, very rewarding to me over the years. So I'm going to really wind it up now and circle back to what I started with, where I went into this really deep, profound, existential thought of what's the meaning of life. You know, as I'm thinking about my life, you know, we wonder, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? And I actually read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I hope some of you have read it. It was written in the 50s. It's worth it. And what I got out of that is, it's so simple, but it was still a revelation to me. The meaning of life is to have a meaningful life. So I'm comfortable with that. I raised a family. You saw some of the pictures before. I've learned a lot. I've loved a lot. I've been loved. I've given a lot. And I hope that I left the world just a little better place. So that's my story of Rise, and I hope it was of some interest.